Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the 63rd episode of the Online Tennis Podcast, a very special episode. We are joined by Vansh, Vermani and Owen Lewis. How are you doing, guys? Start with Vansh, I guess.
Doing awesome. Still buzzing from that match last night between Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner, and they just delivered for 5 hours and 15 minutes on every single end, and I'm on such a high. So can't wait to get into it.
Owen, how
Yeah,
about you?
yeah, same. I think my brain is still spasming from last night because it was a truly insane match. Probably the best of the year, one of the best in the past few years. Definitely one of the best recently at the U.S. Open. And since it was between two young players, like this, is just a great omen for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that, guys. Of course, I'll give you an idea of what I was planning on doing. I was going to divide the episode into sort of talking about the story of the match itself, what actually happened, talk a little bit of analysis, and then talk bigger picture. Sort of you can wax poetically, and that sort of thing. I'm sure there'll be a lot of crossover and stuff. But yeah, that's my idea. So we could just start by sort of talking about how the match actually played out. Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, by the way, please like and subscribe. We'll dive in. Where to start? I don't know. The obviously 5 sets for anybody who didn't watch it. Watch as much of it as you can. 5 sets of just the hardest hitting, I guess you could possibly imagine without missing the court. It's crazy movement, all the superlatives in the book. From the very beginning, though, I can't even cast my mind back that far. The first set is that far back, to be honest. Any of you guys remember what happened in that first set?
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
mean,
say I think the first set was kind of the least enthralling out of the five. Like
Yeah.
Alcaraz got an early break, and then it was back on serve, and then I think Sinner had a chance to get another break, but Alcaraz took it 6-3. I think like things got really insane after that. I feel like the first set there's the least to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. I think it really, really sort of lit up by the end of the second set. I would say, I don't know if I'm jumping too far ahead. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but obviously Sinner went up a break, 3-1, then it went back to 5-all eventually. And then, of course, at 6-5, with Sinner serving to stay in the set, he went down love 40, and I would say that was probably the first sort of episode in the whole show. From love 40, Sinner delivers 3 unreturned serves, goes to deuce. Alcaraz hits probably the shot of the year with the behind the back shot. Please watch that back if you've not seen it. The following point, Sinner plays a pretty decent point, but Alcaraz manages to turn it around, gets the opportunity to hit a forehand into the open court to put the match essentially to bed with a 2-sets-to-love lead, and nets the forehand. And we go to a tie break. Sinner plays a great tie break, saves another set point, I believe, so 5 set points in all, and takes the second set. What were you guys thinking at that point? I was totally gobsmacked, and I thought, if Sinner keeps playing like this, he is just a whisker better than Alcaraz for me, and would deserve to win the match. And that kind of is what played out. Obviously, we'll fast forward a bit in a second. But what were you guys thinking during that second set?
yeah. So for me, it really started at 5-3 actually when Sinner was up 5-3, and then Alcaraz hits this unbelievable backhand down the line sliding passing shot. And at first I was like,
Yeah,
that is crazy. I've not seen anything like this in a while. And then he just followed it up with the behind the back, and then you got you had that, and I'm like, he's coming up with all the highlight reel shots here. This is all, this he is putting in so much effort here to go up 2 sets to love from 5-3 down, and that if he doesn't take this set, this is going to be absolutely crushing, because Sinner's playing really well too, and they were both playing really well at the same time. But I just felt like Sinner knuckled down and he won the big points in the second set, and he was better at doing that, managing that, than Alcaraz was, who yeah, like, I mean, he'll get all the Sports Center highlights and all of that, but like, the way Sinner, what also impressed me is the way Sinner, because he was up and down with his serving throughout the whole match, but from 5-6 to come up with those 3 unreturnables, and then just hit an ace at 6-5, I believe, on in the tiebreak to save a
yeah.
set point. And then I thought was a little strange is that on Alcaraz's set point, he goes over really far left to the outside and starts serving from there.
I thought that was really
And
dumb. I don't think you
yeah,
should have done
and
that.
it didn't work for him at all in the previous times he tried it. So I'm like, why are you doing this? And if you're going to do it, go down the tee at least. Don't give Sinner his favorite shot, which is that backhand down the line return. And then
Yeah.
Sinner just comes up with a winner, and he hits it, and it was just. And at that point, I thought, man, Alcaraz might win more points. He might have all the better stats on this sheet, but he might still end up losing this because Sinner is just that good too. So that's kind of what I was thinking at that point.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the first phase of the match, like really from the second set until like midway through the fourth, was defined by Sinner not necessarily playing better, but by winning more of the big points. Because in that second set, he had 5-4, 15 love serving, and then it went to 5-6 love 40, three set
Yeah,
points for Alcaraz. Alcaraz barely lost a point in that phase, and so I was thinking like, when Alcaraz is doing this, there's nothing Sinner can do. But he had that missed forehand on set point. I think he missed an easy forehand at 7-all in the tiebreak, and then he had that weird
yeah.
serving thing on the set point. And so I felt like Sinner really wrestled that set away from Alcaraz, not necessarily by peaking, but by hitting really great shots at the right times. And Alcaraz couldn't quite find those highlight reel shots on the biggest points.
Yeah, Vance, you mentioned that. I think this is quite a good time to sort of segue into that on Twitter, I believe, on Alcaraz's temperament, I guess, on breakpoints and maybe going for a little too much in the pressure moments. Do you stand by that now, given how the match played out? Do you believe there's a lot of work to be done there, or do you think maybe this is just going to be Alcaraz forever and it's not necessarily a bad thing in the long run?
To be honest, I think it's just a maturity thing. I'm not too worried about it in the long run. Just because, first of all, he has like better than 99% of the players that are coming up with this stuff. So he is one of the few rare guys on tour who can actually pull it off, those highlight reel shots on the big points. But sometimes I would just like for him to, especially when he has the love 40 and 1540s, and or he's up in the, even I guess it's more so when he's down and he has break points. I would just like for him to play a little bit more patiently and maybe make the opponent, force the opponent to come up with a few, two or three other shots to beat him, because sometimes he can maybe just get a little too overexcited, a little too overambitious, a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, too eager to come up with like the most ridiculous on the run shot. And I just feel like he would have been better off just playing it a little more safe, and then and yeah, because he's going to continue to delight us with all those other highlight reel shots that it
Yeah,
just may not end up mattering in the long run. But I think he's just going to be much more efficient if he takes that approach. And it's about
it's
finding the balance, because
yeah,
he is going to always be a highlight reel player, but it's
yeah.
just about
I
finding that. Yeah,
Honestly, for me though, I think it's a matchup thing because we talk about Novak in lockdown mode and the ability to sort of get errors out of his opponents basically in the most intense moments. Wimbledon 2019 tiebreaks, probably the most famous example, I guess. But Alcaraz being able to come up with shots like that in pressure moments is the perfect antidote to your lockdown modes. So if he was to
yeah.
come up against Djokovic doing that, you'd fancy either of their chances to take it. You wouldn't just say this is a done deal for Novak. So I don't know. I feel like it could benefit him in a lot of ways. And really, if we do see him, he looks silly if he misses the shot, but he looks fantastic if he does get it. I do get what you mean though. He doesn't have to hit it 100% all the time, but yeah, if it works for him, it works for him, honestly. And he did eventually come through the match, so I'm probably can't go for it, Alcaraz,
Yeah,
definitely.
I think you both make good points. Like, I don't think he needs a full overhaul with how he plays big points, but I do agree that sometimes some more safety could help because he was like 4 for 17 on break points at one point. But
Yeah.
by the same token, like on the match point, he saved that with a really aggressive backhand return that forced an error. And like you said, Jack, he did win, so it's tough to argue with his strategy overall. Like I think in the fifth set, um, or maybe it was the fourth set, he got back on serve at 3-all with like a first serve return winner. And so like he's going to do crazy stuff like that. And it does work a lot of the time, but I do agree that like on the low 40s and the 1540s, like let the opponent miss sometimes.
Yeah. And moving forward to the third set, again, it gets blurry before about 5-all, but I remember Alcaraz, you can fill in the blanks for me. I remember Alcaraz serving at 6-5. There was a really, really important point at 30-15, I believe, in Alcaraz's serve, where Sinner scuffs a return back into play, and it kind of went unnoticed in some ways. I think there wasn't really enough focus on it, but he scuffed the return back into play, somehow managed to get the Alcaraz, I think, sliced it, I believe, and then Sinner whipped the forehand pass within an inch of the line, which we'll segue onto in a second, by the way, Sinner's passing shots. Because anyway, though, yeah, it goes into a tiebreak, right? And then Sinner basically has all the momentum. There was one other
Sinner
really
was
important.
unbelievable in that tiebreak. My
Yeah, I
goodness.
know.
almost borderline unplayable.
I know, it's just like Alcaraz couldn't do anything, almost resigned to his
Yeah.
fate in some ways.
He
There was
looked
a
up at Ferrero, and Ferrero was like, you got this. Just figure it out yourself." And at that point, Carlos was like, "No, but you got to tell me what to do." And but Ferrero was like, "No, I'm teaching you how to be a man. You'll figure this out."
yeah, it's a father son moment for sure. The point though that really took the biscuit for me was the juice point. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
the first juice point possibly, at 6-5 for Sinner to earn break point. And then obviously, I don't know if you guys got Robbie Koenig commentating your match, but it merited the tennis neither of the gods line. I don't
Yes,
know
he
if
had
you
he
heard
had
that
been
one.
waiting to bust that one out for a long time, and then that point he was like, yeah,
Have
so
I
good.
missed anything in that third set there, by the way? I'm sure there was something else that happened earlier on. Was Sinner also up a break in that set?
No,
Possibly.
this set I think is the one that Alcaraz really blew because he should have broken it 1-all. He did break it 2-all, gave that back, and then he served for it and had 30-15 and couldn't like. Sinner was great in the tiebreak, but it never should have gotten to that point. Alcaraz should have won that set 6-4 or 7-5.
Yeah.
I thought he would. I thought he would actually take it 7-5 when he hit that backhand on the line at
I did
30-40.
too, yeah.
Yeah, I thought, okay, he's got this now, but then it went into a tiebreak, and then it was Sinner's turn to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all Sinner. The segue I wanted to make there, guys, was onto Sinner's passing shots, and I guess we can sort of flesh out a little bit on how both players approach the net in general. Because obviously, since Darren Cahill's joined Jannik Sinner's team, he's become so efficient at the net, and we saw it throughout this match. In particular, this match, I feel this is the match that showcased it. I actually wasn't aware of how good he was before this match basically got played, but it gave Sinner a lot of options. I'll delve into that in a second. On the other side of the net, Alcaraz honestly didn't do much wrong in approaching the net half the time. But the passing shots from Jannik Sinner, it will be interesting to see which of the two players we could call a better passer, basically, as the match or as the rivalry develops. But for me at the moment, Sinner's passing shots are just a step ahead of Alcaraz's because he nailed them almost every time. He was absolutely great. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Am I giving him too much praise? What do you
Well,
think?
it's interesting because I feel like Alcaraz is faster, so he can probably get in position to hit more passes, but I think Sinner is probably more precise with the shot itself. I mean, he hit one in the first set where it was over his head and he ran around, like, not to hit a tweener, but hit a shot around his body, and he hit, like, a clean forehand cross-court pass. Um, and yeah, like, I just love the way the net is used in this matchup because both guys are great at using it to, like, put away an easy volley. But over time, since they're both so good from the baseline, it also kind of becomes an escape route. Like, you don't want to play a 20 shot rally every time. So sometimes you run to the net, like, out of desperation because you're like, I can't keep doing this. Sort of see that with, like, Nadal Medvedev sometimes as well, when every shot is just a war from the baseline and someone needs it to stop. So I was really interested in how that dynamic shook out.
Yeah. Yeah, just before I move on to you, Vansh, a little bit of a fleshing out of what you just said there, Owen, because Yannick ended up approaching the net 61
Yeah.
times throughout the match. In their previous two wins for Sinner, he'd approached the net in Umag 18 times, obviously not much of a surprise. But at Wimbledon, and obviously that was still over 3 hours or so, he approached the net 33 times, which is just about half of the amount of approaches he made in this match on arguably at a surface where it's probably easier to approach the net than it would be on grass, I would say. So it was really interesting to see that used as a tactic. He was approaching a lot on the forehand, I felt, and doing it really, really well, just giving it was never anything too flashy. It wasn't like he'd have to hit something close to a winner before he could approach the net, but I thought he was really efficient when he came forward, and he displayed probably better net approach prowess than Alcaraz for me throughout this match. What did you think, Vanch?
Yeah, I thought he was really excellent at that. I mean, if you look at his percentage overall, he was like winning 42 out of those points. So like almost 2/3 of the points, 2/3 of the time he came over the net, he was winning. And Alcaraz, I was surprised, actually didn't find that many ways to come forward. Like he was considerably having to play from the baseline because Sinner is just so good at protecting both the forehand and the backhand. So you just feel like every time you come up, I agree with you on the passing shots. Like he has such good movement and he reads the counter attack like so well. So it's so difficult to get the ball by him when you come forward, and even someone who's as good as Alcaraz at the net putting away volleys, he was having to like really, unless he like hit like a sublime drop shot or like just a sublime touch shot, it was going to be really hard for him to finish the point outright. So it's kind of tough. And then Sinner, um, like they're both so good at sliding in the corners, but sometimes Alcaraz is so freaking fast that sometimes he overruns the ball, so then he has a lot more difficulty on the passing shot because it's like he's having to like almost hit 2 or 3 passing shots when he could have just ended it with one, but he's just so quick that sometimes he's just a little out of position, and that's why sometimes you see like the behind the back, or like he saw the shot that he hit in Barcelona against Dinamo when he just overran it and then his shot was behind him and he just found the pass. He can come up with crazy stuff like that, and then he'll chase down balls that you're like, how in the world are you even trying to chase that? That seems like impossible to get. But he can pull off the impossible sometimes. But man, like it's just he just covers every inch of the court. So it's just
I mean, it plants the seed of doubt. To be fair, if you know that he's going to go after absolutely anything, you feel like you've just got to put a little bit less on a drop shot, for example, a bit more on a approach shot.
Remember that swing volley when Sinner served for the match on break point? That could have had something to do with it.
Yeah. I do want to give Alcaraz credit because he did force a lot of errors out of Sinner, especially in the 5th set. I did feel like Sinner was really having to overhit, and a lot of that was Alcaraz's speed.
Yeah. One final note on that, by the way, I feel like as Sinner gets progressively better at the net, we'll see a bit of a Hubert Hurkacz effect in the fact that he's such a lanky, sort of wiry guy, with really long levers. I feel like that gives him a really, really massive advantage when he does come forward.
For sure.
Moving on to the 4th set, though, and of course, this is probably the most dramatic of the lot, because serving at 5-3, Jannik had a match point on his own serve, having, by the way, saved a break point at 30-40 with an ace. So I thought of more of the same. We're going to see Sinner do a few more unreturned serves, and that'll be bish bash bosh. That'll be it, basically. Talk about the match point first, actually, because obviously I think Sinner had a second serve, and it was out wide to Alcaraz's backhand. Alcaraz goes cross court into Sinner's backhand, and Sinner ends up missing wide. Do you feel like anything went wrong there? Do you feel like Sinner should have done anything different? Obviously, hindsight's 2020.
I don't really think so. I mean, to me, it kind of showed how small the margins were, because he didn't just hit an ace at 30-40. I think he hit either an ace or an unreturnable at 15-30. He was serving great from the ad side in that game, but when he missed the first serve on match point, I was like, yes, so much pressure. Like, of course you're going to miss that first serve. And then I thought Alcaraz hit quite a good return. I would qualify Sinner's miss as a forced error. So yeah, like, it happens. The break point is another story, but yeah, match point, no issues.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Definitely. I was just gonna say, because when he gave away that first serve, I think going wide to the Alcaraz backhand, not an awful idea. I would probably say backhand to backhand. Maybe Sinner's got the slightest advantage. Obviously, there's really not much in it, but I would say obviously Sinner able to open up the court just a little bit better than Carlos with that backhand. Maybe means he would be the favourite in that cross court rally. Vansh, have you got any other thoughts on it?
No, I mean I didn't have any. I don't really think Sinner really did much wrong on the match point. I agree with Owen. I think the return from Alcaraz was quite strong, and he had to go cross court again. So I feel like it was, and also the pressure of the heat of the moment. Of course, he was feeling it at that point. So I think Alcaraz really earned the break back.
A couple of. I was going to say a couple of double faults as well in that service game.
Yeah. From the deuce side, right? Like 15 all, I think, and maybe 30 all as well.
I think, and deuce point, and then probably one of the ones earlier on as well. I don't really. 15 all was one of them as well. Yeah.
Do you guys feel like his serve has improved since he had Darren Cahill on? Getting a lot more
I think it's just improved in general.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say that as well. I thought it had been this good sort of from the start of the year, and spot serving wise, it's been brilliant sort of over the past 52 weeks even. I would say full year. I don't know if it's so much Cahill. I could be wrong, but I also think there's still a lot of work to do on it for sure. But I'll properly give you my thoughts on that when we get to the analysis, because there's quite a lot I want to say about
it. I had a question for you guys. This is moving backwards a little bit, but after Sinner won that third set, and especially after he got the break in the fourth set, was there ever a point where you thought, like, he's got this? Like, Alcaraz, like, he had his chances, he didn't take them, and now he's going to lose because he had 2 long, brutal, grinding sets stolen from him. Because I thought so. I didn't think he was going to win after the third set.
Yeah, you don't. Sorry, you don't mean when Sinner was serving for the match necessarily. You mean even earlier than that. Yeah, not no. Yeah, do you know what? I suppose Alcaraz came out pretty flat actually in the fourth set, right when Sinner went up a break pretty easily. I think I thought it was kind of done then because I thought Alcaraz looks flat as I've ever seen him, and it's going to take a lot to get him back. So
Yeah,
Vansh,
I honestly thought at 3-1, I thought it was over because I was like, okay, now he's stretching the lead. And then, but I did think when it was 3-5, and I thought, okay, if Alcaraz can just get an easy hold here, you know, and make Sinner serve this thing out. Because when Alcaraz broke, I'm like, yeah, of course.
Because this is what he does. He's like he's building such a monster CV with doing this. Like this is like the 5th time he's done this year or something.
Yeah, and most of those matches he's
Exactly.
lost, but it's just that he's so hard to put away. Like it's
I mean,
you just expect.
like you look back on that Wimbledon match with Sinner, and like that could have gotten really hairy for Sinner because he should have won it in straights. Alcaraz saved a couple of match points, I think, and then he had break points early in the fourth. Like he's so hard to put away, like you said, Bob.
Sorry, I'll round off the end of the sort of match recap, I guess. Alcaraz does go on to break again to close out the set. I don't think I've missed out any crazy shots unless you guys can think of any off the top of your head to close the fourth set. If not, though, at the start of the fifth, Sinner did manage to get the first break. Alcaraz breaks back. At this point, it was like 7:30 in the morning in the UK, lad. I was done. I really wasn't absorbing anything. This more turned into just like I can't analyze this anymore. This is just like way too much for me. I don't even know how these guys are still hitting the ball this hard. So if you guys have any thoughts about this set, the one thing I would say is that it started to look a lot more physical as Sinner's serve kind of started to go, probably because of the legs, I would imagine, by the fifth set. And at that point, it looked like Alcaraz had more of the advantage. Ever so slightly, obviously, there really wasn't much in it from the baseline, but Alcaraz was just able to turn more of the points into rallies, and that played to his advantage.
Yeah, Alcaraz looked like slightly the fresher of the two, but it was so close. You really couldn't tell.
I mean, the thing that got me was after the match, Sinner said like, "Yeah, like I feel good physically. Like I'm gonna do this a lot more times in my career." And it's like, good for you, man. But like having a little trouble believing that anyone could truly mean that, but amazing. And I do want to shout out Sinner's mental fortitude as well. Like the fact that he got the first break in the fifth is kind of insane when you think about how the fourth set ended. Like I think a lot of players lose that set 6-0. I think a lot of them get broken immediately. And he was up 3-2, 40-15. Like he didn't win another game from that point on, but he was not that far away from winning that match, even in the fifth. So I'm really impressed. It's like he's pretty unflappable mentally, I think, at this point.
And then he played a pretty great point. He played a pretty great point in that eighth game
30
as well. And then Alcaraz just runs that backhand down, and you're just like, and he hits a passing chance. So Sinner's got a great approach, and Sinner hits this really good backhand angle volley. I'm like, against 98% of players, that's a winner. They're not even getting there. Alcaraz not only gets there, but then on the slide, he passes him cross court. It was just like, how are you moving like this at 3 in the morning? How are you doing
I remember this point now because that was the point I was just like, I don't even know how to analyze this anymore. It's just like, it's just too much. Yeah, it was
how about Sinner's running forehand? Is it the best running forehand we've seen since
the one he hit to break in the second set at the start was freaking insane. Like, I agree. Best since Del Potro for sure.
It's interesting actually because I went into that match thinking that Alcaraz was slightly better, and I actually thought he'd be able to use that to his advantage if they were trading forehands cross court. Because a lot of the time you see him do exactly the same thing. Like somebody will hit a forehand that looks like it should force the error, and Alcaraz is able to go back cross court with something over 100 miles an hour, and you're just like, how on earth has he done that? I honestly don't know. It's a toss up for me because I feel like Alcaraz holds his own in that regard really, really well too. So. Is there anything else I've missed in terms of the story before I get a little bit more analytical about the match?
I don't think so. I thought it was pretty crazy. I mean, on the match point, this was not like a traditional ace, but Alcaraz hit 2 aces in the last game, I think of like 5 in total. I thought that was notable.
Yeah,
Did he?
he served so
Yeah,
well in
and
that last game.
I think
I was
against Ramos Vinales at Roland Garros, he hit like 3 aces when he served that match out after not really hitting aces throughout the match. So that might be
Yeah,
something to keep an eye on. He could be like he could have a little bit of a Sampras-esque like gene when he closes out matches like that.
yeah. Right. A bit more on the keys I thought of what actually turned the match in Alcaraz's favour, or why it went his way, and also a little bit on what made the match so competitive from Sinner's point of view as well. Maybe starting with Alcaraz and how hard courts, I believe, really, really benefit him in this matchup compared to other surfaces, in particular on his return. Because I feel like his backhand return is on another planet at times. In particular, his forehand obviously is great as well, but he's really, really good at flattening it out. On a hard court in particular, you get that high bounce, you're able to take it from a nice, comfortable height to hit it. You get the same thing on clay, but not only can you not step in, your flat shot isn't going to be as effective, obviously, on a slower court. So, we saw him being able to do this so frequently throughout the match, and it's maybe something that he has a little bit of the edge on Sinner. I believe on a hard court returns, I guess, as a whole stat. I think he's got a little bit of an edge there. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. I don't know if I'm maybe doing Sinner a bit of a disservice, because obviously he can hold his own on the return as well. But I think it's something maybe that Alcaraz has just got that little bit extra.
Yeah, I think I agree. Like I think both of them probably are better returners, like relatively speaking, than they are servers. And I thought that was part of what made this match so great because like a lot of serves were coming back, a lot of serves were coming back deep, and so you had a lot of rallies, a lot of like defending right off the baseline. And yeah, I do think Alcaraz has that little extra on the return of serve. I mean, since Djokovic and Murray, I think he's the guy who's impressed me with the return the most. It's some of his reflex returns are wild.
Also, what you're talking about on the first serve, he gets so much more. Like he's able to get that ball really deep, like right off the first delivery of the other guy. It's like, especially on his backhand, he actually misses more on the second serve when he has more time to think about it, and then
Yeah,
on the first serve, he's so much better at returning. I feel like on a hard court.
yeah. I'm pretty sure what the first serve percentages and second serve percentages for Sinner were pretty lopsided. Maybe not lopsided, but they were pretty close, right? I think maybe down at like
Yeah,
60% or so. Maybe he's got it in front of
yeah,
you, Vansh.
yeah. And Sinner won like 45% of his second serve points, and he won 64 on his
Yeah,
first serve. But Alcaraz was more even. He was 63% and 59
I
on
mean,
his second.
59 on his second.
yeah,
That's stat of the match, maybe.
yeah. That's actually, I
Yeah.
don't know if that's super telling. On the one thing I would say, and it's quite a nice segue into this, is how Alcaraz chose to serve throughout the match. And I believe his first serve in percentage is probably pretty high, maybe around 75% or so. I might need to double check it. Either way, the tactics for me were probably indicative of the fact that he's not the best spot server in the game by any means, obviously. But also, it was quite smart at the same time. A lot of the time, he chose to go into Sinner's body with not so much pace, just to make sure he made a first serve, relying on the fact that he would get a return from Sinner basically in play, but maybe a slightly shorter ball would give his +1 the advantage, basically. So rather than going for unreturned serves, he prioritised getting shorter returns, basically, into play, and leaning on the fact that he can mop up on the following shot. I also feel like on the second serve, that so this is quite interesting, because in the ad court, in Umag in particular, Alcaraz's favourite second serve out wide, the kicker out wide, gets pretty much destroyed by Sinner's backhand return ability and his ability to sort of hook it cross court, so to speak. He mixed up his second serve really well, and he didn't go to that kicker that often, as you guys were talking about, when he's moving over to the left, and you feel like that's not the best play, and you're right, instinctively it isn't the best play, because against Sinner, that backhand return's going to get crunched. A lot of the time he would go down the tee, a lot of the time he would go into the body when he did have to hit a second serve, and it just stopped Sinner being able to read it. And I'd need to see exactly what he did with his second serve in Ubag, but I imagine he probably went to that kicker over and over again, and there was a lot of variety in this match that that stopped Sinner from being able to get the one up on him every
Yeah, I mean,
single time.
something quick on Alcaraz's weird serving position on the ad side. Like, I think it's amazing he was able to like have as much success on serve as he did with that hurting him, because even if Sinner isn't hitting like returns down the line into the open court, that position just makes no sense to me, because after you hit the serve, you're going to be moving to the center line. So even if the return goes cross court, you're wrong footed when you're trying to get it. Like, I feel like unless you hit a great serve, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Vanch, how did you feel about Alcaraz's serving? Did you sort of feel a similar way, or?
Yeah, I definitely felt like he served quite smart. He was varying his spots as much as he can at this stage in his career. I would say that's probably still the one area that he can improve the most on. Um, and he is capable of serving 130 to 135 on his first serve.
Yeah,
So that does come
and
in pretty handy, especially on the deuce side when he goes down the tee with it. I feel like
yeah,
that's one of his best serves, and obviously the second serve kicker out on the ad side.
yeah,
Those are probably his two best. But I didn't feel like it ever hindered him. He didn't double
no,
fault much, only 5 times. Sinner, I feel
yeah,
like, was more up and down on the second serve. He had some really good moments, and then some where he just kind of double faulted 2 or 3 times in a game, and
yeah,
maybe that could have made the difference. I mean, it's very slim, but like potentially. And he was also pretty solid off the ground in terms of keeping the unforced errors low in general. Like he had 38 for the whole match and he had 58 winners, whereas Sinner actually had more winners, but he
did
also
he?
had 63 unforced errors, so
Right.
61 winners. So I mean, yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying about serve speed there, because yeah, Alcaraz can serve about 130. There was a period of the match where he was delivering first serves the same sort of speed that Nadal was second serving to Tiafoe the other night. You know, sort of 100 miles an hour to 107 miles an hour frequently, and not just sliders. One's down the tee, one's into the body. He was prioritizing getting that serve in completely for a few sets. It might be
yeah,
something that hinders them in the future, I guess, as both players improve. But at the moment, it was probably the smart thing to do, especially against a guy who can get quite jammed up. Who, you know, if you're trying to spot serve against him and you don't have a lot of pace on it, it's going to come back for sure. You're quite a lot of the time you're better to go for the body serve. He was smart about it, and I feel like it. You know, at the same time, there maybe was a few important points where it hindered him a little, but on the whole, I think he did what he could with a serve that's pretty lacking
Yeah,
relatively.
I was pretty impressed with
yeah.
it. Like, I think I mean, earlier this year against Djokovic in Madrid, I thought his serve was going to get destroyed, and he somehow only got broken one time. So I think like he has a pretty good sense of how to protect it, even though the shot itself isn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought that was going to hold him back on grass, and I feel like it sometimes did at Wimbledon. In this first round, and then obviously the fourth round against Sinner, and maybe in some of the post Wimbledon clay court tournaments, those couple that he played, he wasn't as effective in general. But I feel like every time I've seen him on a hard court, and I've seen him at Indian Wells, where it's like slow and high bouncing, and then Madrid obviously was like ideal. I feel like for his kick serve, especially his second serve kick.
yeah,
So in general, on 80% of the courts he plays on, don't think it's going to be a weakness or
yeah,
hinder him in any way.
yeah. I think you're right for sure. And the last thing that kind of became relevant, and I touched on it during the sort of match recap, is that the longer the match wore on, the more it sort of suited Alcaraz, and I feel like it's not a tactic necessarily, but it is really important to how the match event or the result of the match in the end. I feel, because for all the serve incapabilities of Alcaraz, the more the match wears on, the less legs the opponent can use, and the less likely they are to be able to serve well in a fifth set. Say, and it's kind of Rafa esque in a way. Is probably the comparison I would make. Do you feel like that was a massive part of the match? Because as I say, I was pretty conked out in that
Yeah.
fifth set, but that's
Um,
the
I think it
that's
was
the impression
important
I
to
got.
a point. Like, yes, Alcaraz did have more legs in the fifth, but I also think it's important to remember Sinner was 1 point away from winning this match in like 4.5 hours, and that's pretty long too. So I feel like it did affect things, but it may not the next time they play. It may not when they play other people. I felt like it was one of the smaller factors in the end, really.
I would say that Sinner is probably a more efficient mover, but Alcaraz is more explosive overall. You guys think that's true?
Yeah, yeah, I'd say so. Less steps, I guess, to get to where he needs to go. Right? He's like a big, massive daddy long. I mean,
Of
do you know what
course,
daddy
yeah.
long legs is?
I
Maybe
I,
that's a Scottish.
I can see it. Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like it just takes him less time to get to where he needs to be.
Do you think maybe some of that is just how he's built, like with his he's just lankier, right, and just has
Yeah.
better reach, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So also, yeah, it doesn't need to stretch as far to get to each shot. You're quite right. So that's also why, yeah, when you get him wide on the forehand, there's a chance that maybe Sinner is the more capable of the two at hitting that shot, I guess, in the long run. But yeah, obviously the movement of Alcaraz is basically unmatched, so it's kind of hard to to say that one's better than the other for me, basically. So do you guys feel there
Yeah.
was anything else analysis wise? These are kind of small points, but honestly, the way the match played out with so much drama and so much sort of high stakes rallies that just were almost like unintelligible at some points, the way they were hitting the balls. Do you feel like there was anything else that came into play?
Um, it's their temperaments are kind of interesting, right? Like Sinner was obviously he's obviously done a much better job of getting the crowd involved and getting pumped up and sort of zoning in on those big points and just really playing with more energy than we've seen. But Alcaraz is much more emotive and expresses a lot more, and at some point you feel like that combined with chasing down so many shots is maybe going to wear him down, but it just doesn't. It feels like he can run for 10 hours plus, and for Sinner, it kind of just he's able to stay so focused and stay just kind of brush off mistakes. That's one thing both guys are so good at, like the way they just their
Mm.
attitude and how they compete. I feel like there was never a let up
Yeah. I
just because
I
of
Yeah.
that.
sorry.
The-
I think their temperaments
Sorry,
really are
going
like
on.
as good as it gets, and in different ways. Like I think they're both more positive than negative. I
Yeah.
think for a while Sinner was almost like a little too shy on court, but then I think after Tiafoe beat him in Vienna last year, he learned the value of using the crowd and playing to the crowd, and I think he's done that pretty consistently since then. And that that's something that Alcaraz has always done. I think the crowd loves them both. Like I think Alcaraz is the more probably visually easier to appreciate, with like the speed and the hot shots and like his expressions, which were fantastic in this match, by the way. Like he always nods and smiles, but like he had to come up with some new stuff for this. Like after he won the fourth set and after the behind the back thing. But yeah, like I'm really impressed with them. I think they conduct themselves like veterans.
One closing thought, actually, I've just had that maybe will spark something in you guys as well, before we move on to something sort of bigger picture. But for me, when it got to the point where it looked like Jannik was going to win the match in the fourth set, I had a plethora of reasons why he'd been able to get himself in that position. I feel like his net approaching was great. I feel like his spot serving under pressure was awesome. I feel like where he chose to serve was great as well. I feel like the way he was able to sometimes turn the rally into a backhand cross court dynamic was awesome too. And then when he went on to lose the match, and I had to figure out reasons why Alcaraz was the eventual winner, it, I don't have as many things to draw on, to be honest. And I don't know what that says about Carlos necessarily. Maybe you guys have the answer. I
Yeah.
actually feel like
Good.
Sinner, yeah, played the tactically sounder match than Alcaraz. Is my end feeling, and a lot of what happened is exactly what you just said there, Owen. Was the Carlos effect in the fourth set, where he's just able to take control of the match from a position that seems unassailable, and eventually closes it out. Fans, do you feel like that at all?
Yeah, I feel like maybe Sinner was just a bit more steadier, and he sort of maintained an 8 to 9 out of 10 throughout throughout the whole match most of the time, whereas Alcaraz could hit like a 15, and then he could go down to like a 6 or a 5, and it
I
was
saw
just
you saying that. Yeah,
and then it kind of reminded me a lot of like some of the Federer Djokovic or you know, Federer in general versus the other big two, um,
yeah,
in terms of that dynamic where it was just like you can hit like an 11 or a 10, and you can do that and even sustain it for quite a while, but then when you're down to a 5 or a 6, then you just need to make sure that doesn't happen for like a longer stretch of games. And sometimes
yeah,
maybe Alcaraz is like kind of figuring that out right now, and you're kind of seeing him figure that out in real time, which is so cool. Like it's
Yeah, it's great.
another takeaway that I had is that sometimes you look at a player and you're just like, you know, how are they that good? Like, like for example, like with Sinner, like it's not that I've underrated him or anything. Like I've always known about how good he is, how even he is off of both wings, how well he moves, how good he is at returning, and I've sort of known all these things, but I never actually thought he's that good.
Yeah,
Like until he faces Alcaraz, that's when you realize like what makes him so good. Because I feel like Alcaraz brings out the absolute best in Jannik Sinner so far from any other matchup that I've seen. I've seen him play like a lot of top players, and sometimes I've just seen him like lacking that extra gear. But then you see the way he sort of matches up against Carlos and how they're pushing each other, and how much they know how good the other guy is, and I just feel like they're both going to improve so much as a result of this rivalry. And we've already had 3 meetings on 3 different surfaces in 2 months. Like at this rate they are gonna play each other 10, 20, 30 times. I don't think that's like waxing poetic. I feel like we're gonna get this matchup a lot, and they're both gonna
yeah,
improve so much against so many other players because of this. So I just, yeah,
yeah. I mean, that's a
I'm
brilliant
all in on
segue.
this rivalry. I'm so all in.
It's quite interesting because I was going to make that point. Just the comparisons obviously will end at some point, but it's nice to just indulge for me sometimes.
Yeah,
Nadal was just shy of 21 when he met Novak for the fourth time. Sinner's just past 21. I mean, Nadal and Novak hadn't had a match of this caliber at that point in their rivalry. These guys are so on track. It does just obviously I would like to shy away from the big three comparisons overall, but there's some stuff I just like. I like those sort of comparisons, I guess, maybe to head to heads, etc. Stuff like that. How many times they're going to play, stuff like that. Exactly, getting excited about it, basically. It's really interesting to see these two guys taking the reins as the best young players, because the preceding generation, Medvedev, Tsitsipas, and Zverev, all
yeah,
sort of embodied a very different kind of player. Your sort of aggressive counter puncher, I guess, or big serving counter puncher, I should say. Somebody who's able to sort of like Djokovic, but maybe not Tsitsipas so much, but Zverev and Medvedev at least, sort of embodying a completely different character in the age of sort of slow courts. And then all of a sudden, Sinner and Alcaraz somehow completely reversing that dynamic and going back to sort of Federer-esque sort of play out of nowhere. I don't know what's brought it on. I don't know if it's sustainable, basically, is what I'm saying. And maybe this is just a matchup thing that we're going to see between these two players.
it's going to be kind of interesting to see how we evaluate them in the larger pictures, because I feel like they're going to have the most time without Djokovic and Nadal in the picture. Like your Zverev, Tsitsipas, Medvedev, they still had to contend with, I guess, strong versions of Djokovic and Nadal the past 3 or 4 years to some extent, right? Especially in the majors.
Mm-hmm.
So now I think we're going to actually see them. I think now we're going to actually see them play Tsitsipas, Medvedev, Zverev a lot more than Djokovic and Nadal, and we're going to have a lot more of those kind of matches. So yeah, it's
It's ridiculously exciting. If these guys are 1 and 2 in the world, obviously, then yeah, sign me up. The last thing I will say before we close is, does Alcaraz have any chance of getting beaten by Frances Tiafoe in the semi-finals? The one thing I would say, if fatigue is on anybody's mind, is after a little bit of scouting on Alcaraz's long matches this year. Basically, I think he's played, or won, sorry, I should say, 6 3-hour plus matches this year. He has gone on to win every single match, the following match. 4 of those were straight sets. One of them was Sinner. So sorry, the 6 is Tiafoe tomorrow. So he's won 5 of the preceding matches. I mean, it's unreal. That I mean, that sort of stat is crazy. It doesn't seem to phase him, and I just feel like he's been prepared for this basically since he was born, sort of thing, almost like super soldier esque under the helm of Juan Carlos Ferrero. What do you guys think?
yeah, it is possible. Just like the adrenaline and just the extra day off, maybe will just be enough in combination of his just how much of a physical beast he already is. But it's like it's so hard to overlook. Like that's 10 hours of competition that he had. Like into 2 or 3 in the morning because he also had like the 4.5 hour match against Chilich, and then he had this one. I guess Sinner also had the match against Ivashka, but I mean now Sinner is not there anymore. But like I know, like 10 hours though in his last 2 matches. And then Tiafo is like, yeah, I mean they played once, but Alcaraz was like 17. I don't think that really plays in. It was in Barcelona on clay, but Tiafo right now is playing amazing. Like the way he's striking the ball, the way the options that he has in his game, and the touch of the net. It's going to be such an exciting match. I can't wait for it. Tiafo versus Alcaraz. But
Yeah,
I agree with Owen. Like if Alcaraz is playing is like if Alcaraz is peaking, like I don't think there's anyone left in the tournament who can match that sort of level.
yeah,
And this
yeah.
will probably end up being a tougher match for him than the final, just stylistically, I think.
Yeah, the way Tiafoe's been serving, it's definitely more likely to be a difficult matchup than the other two for me.
Yeah.
We'll close up shop there. Try and come down from the uncome downable in that match because I'm still totally flapped by it. Got to say, I need some sleep. I need to I need to totally rally. I'll figure it out. Right, thank you very much to everybody at home as well for listening this far through. Please catch Owen's work at Tennis Nation. Please catch Vansh's work at Vansh2K on Twitter. You can catch my work at online_Jack. If you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Thanks very much, guys. We'll catch you next time on the Online Tennis Podcast. Cheers. Thank you.